Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this presentation on budget planning and also social return on investment. My name is Tarek Titwell, Chair of the African American Community Foundation, and we're also joined together with my esteemed colleague, Dr. Jody Turner, who is also the Chair of our Grant Review Committee. So just a little bit about the African American Community Foundation. AACF is 25 years, and its mission is to really address issues and social disparities experienced by African American communities to serve as a center for African American philanthropic development. This was adopted back in 2005, and we have been a catalyst for supporting economic resilience, equal opportunity, structured philanthropy and leadership skills, and cultural awareness. It was started with some support from Mayor Laus, also with some Bank of America, Knight Foundation, and Duke Energy, and has grown exceptionally well to where we have two different endowment funds. One is the Lethea Jones Henderson Endowment Fund and also the Elizabeth Randolph African American Community Endowment Fund. Two women who at the time were visionary to say that it is critical to support nonprofit programs that addresses African American concerns and to ensure the longevity of those programs by endowing some asset to ensure that these organizations will be able to thrive and continue. So since that, we have given more than $500,000 in grants. We have provided a lot of grant writing workshops and series, programs to educate potential donors, and also support nonprofits in the Charlotte region. Some of our funding priorities include public education support, health and economic development, K-12 public education support services, out of school time, focusing on services for disease that disproportionately affect African Americans, also social determinants of health and economic development as relates to supporting African American owned businesses and business development. So with that, I'm going to get ready to turn it over to our chair of the Grant Review Committee to talk a little bit more about, the budget planning and also being prepared for for submitting a grant either to AACF or to any other organization that you are asking or requesting funding. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Turner.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Okay, we're going to try to show you how to get the money today. Okay, so pay close attention. As you can see on the slide, there are certain budget questions that are necessary for you to receive funding from any organization. You really have to know what you're going to do with the funds and how you're going to plan to use them and what your budget's going to look like and why is this needed in your budget. Will there be opportunities for you to receive other funding? Because if you depend on what one organization gives you, and we have limited amounts that we work with, it would not be enough for you to operate on the level that you possibly could operate or make the impact that you could possibly make. So we encourage you to seek other sources of funding as well. And then how long do you expect to be doing whatever it is that you're doing? How long will you be helping in the community, or how long will you be helping other business owners? And what does it take to make your program sustainable? I've been in situations where I've seen people for 2 years, they'll do one thing and they'll just pivot and do something totally different. And that does not go along with their mission statement or their objectives of their particular program. So make sure that everything is aligned for the common good. Next slide, please. Do's and don'ts. We should have called this one Show Me the Money, or Show Me How You're Going to Spend the Money, because that's very important. And Tariq has a really good slide in here as well that gives some examples of good and bad budget sheets. So you should be specific about your costs. And I say that I have been working with federal grants for the past 20 years, and they may not count every nickel, but every nickel needs to be accounted for in some type of way. And it also has to align with your program activities. I can't talk about tutoring in my budget application and then I take students on trips, and it's not in my budget, but I do that and I'm just going to move some money so I can take them to this conference or to this show. I need to put that in my specific details about what we're going to do with the money from the beginning. And also in personnel expenses, you need to keep those no higher than 35%, because remember, the goal of the grant is to provide a service for the areas in the community that we mentioned earlier, not to give people jobs. Now, that could be part of what you're doing, but you want to use the money on folks getting jobs or training for jobs, as opposed to be on your staff, as opposed to your staff. You don't want to pay your staff a lot of money. That money needs to come from someplace else when you're seeking funding from this organization. And also, don't just have general budget expenses. Whenever we say supplies, that could be interpreted many different ways. It could be your office supplies, or it could be travel, or it could be uniforms, or it could be tickets to a gala. So be very specific when you talk about your budget expenses and what you're going to support and what is supportable, or what is, I don't want to say legal, because I don't think legality has anything to do with it, but there is a common sense of boundaries when you're working with the grant, and you don't want to get popped on the hand for spending your funds on the wrong thing. I've never had that experience, but I've heard about it. Next slide, please. Bad example, and on the next page will be a good example. But you see here, look at all the funds that are available for. There was one when I was looking at employees, and there was a lot of money for employees on that particular budget sheet, but I don't see that. Maybe that was changed. But look at the types of expenses that are on this sheet. And are these allowable budget expenses? You only have $7,000, approximately $7,000, and look at what it's being spent on. So the next time you apply for a grant or seek funding or recommendation for funding, people will look at your budget to see how your money was spent, and are you making good use of the funds that you receive. So be very careful about that. So we see a lot of furniture and some things I can't see, but
Yeah.
how does it connect to the service? How
Mhm.
does it connect to the service is the main thing. How does it connect to what you're supposed to be doing in the community? And I don't see a connection. And sometimes if it's something that you may deem to be questionable, do a budget justification in your proposal. You know, we know this may be not be an allowable expense, but this is why we need it and why we're requesting it. But try to get that money from somebody else.
Mhm.
See, it sounds like a party. Does it look like a party to you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this is a bad example. Because this does not have a direct impact on servicing people. This was actually one of the ones that we did not consider, because it seemed like it was an infrastructure grant versus to your point, aligning program activities to your budget to your program activities.
And that's normally what grant reviewers look for. Where is the alignment? What will be the outcome? How is it going to make an impact on the community, or how is it going to reach the goal that you said it would in implementation? Next slide, please. You change these budget sheets on me. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yes. Next slide, please. So this is a good example. So you see, you have staff, but you're not paying the salaries of all the staff. You have two teachers, an instructor, and a program director, but you're only paying for the teacher out of this budget for the teacher and the instructor. The other salaries have to come from somewhere else, because you don't want your grant to be somebody's job indefinitely, because that's pulling money out instead of bringing money in, and that may be defining a service but not providing a service. The other things you can look at, the minibus gas. I'm gonna debate that a little bit, because it depends on what you're doing with your program. If your program is designed to transport people to different locations for different services, that may be an allowable expense, but otherwise, just for you to joyride around, I don't know. And that's why the budget justifications are very important. Any questions about either one of those, or any comments?
Sister Douglas Turner, will y'all be providing these slides to us?
Can we do that, Tariq?
Yeah, I think
yes, the slides will be
It's going to be in their packets.
Excellent. Yeah, this is definitely great information, that especially their alignment, good versus bad.
yeah.
Very good.
And
and
if we can go back to the previous slide, the bad
Mhm.
example.
And show them side by side.
So if we take a look at this bad example here, if you're looking at the total amount of expenses, one of the things we look at is the amount that you're requesting, does it align with the expenses that you're using the grant to cover? So if you notice here, the expenses state $6670, but the request from AACF is $7,000. And so you want to make sure that your budget aligns with the expenses that you are requesting. Because
to the
most
penny.
often,
Is that to the penny? Is that to the
Yes.
penny?
That is to the
That's
penny.
penny. Yeah.
That is to the penny, because you will be asked to provide a grant evaluation report.
Mhm.
And so one of the things you must do is account for the dollars that you spent once that grant evaluation report is due. You want to make sure you keep up with your receipts, keep up with the items that you purchase, so that you make sure you can complete that document or that request when it's time.
So if they don't level out to be the same amount going out as coming in, do they have to return that money?
You do need to, well, yes, if you have dollars remaining, yes, we would ask you to return the funds unused. Most often we ask you to go ahead and spend the dollars, but not spend the dollars, we do ask you.
Because it's been my experience, if you have some left over, we gave you too much.
Mhm.
So we would want to decrease the amount that we give the next time. Any other questions or comments about this?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Tariq?
Yeah, just definitely double down on what Kiana mentioned. As you can see, putting together budget planning, showing that you have other partners or other funders, it could be in kind, that still counts towards resources. What is important is that you have the capacity or the ability to attract additional resources to support your program. And that's something which is, if you have volunteers and you have 15, organization committing 15 volunteers, there is a cost associated with that they are able to say is in-kind support. So be mindful of that. It's something that not just for us, but for any other organization that you may be a funder, you may be appealing to consider that. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's where things get very interesting. We want to, talk more about this, because some folks are great at doing programs, and what we want to see is, how does this benefit society? And I think these are some of the things we want folks to think about as they're doing like a workforce development program, doing a business organization development program supporting entrepreneurs or doing a social service, there is a cost to doing this. And then there's an expectation that the cost for doing this does not exceed the return to society. So if your program per participant is, say, for instance, $4,000, which means over a course of time, your program, all expenses included per participant, is $4,000, for that participant. And that person goes off and goes from, say, no job to a job, or from a one level of not having a degree to having a degree. One way of trying to capture the calculation of social return on investment is looking at the lifetime of the participants, that they'll be, the average life expectancy is 65. The total taxes of new revenue, or this person contributing to, say, local taxes or state taxes at a certain rate, and the consumption, which is the amount that this person will be spending in terms of not just with discretionary income. And utilizing these one is the taxes from their revenue or from their salaries from a state, local area, plus their spending, which is the average spending over the course of that lifetime. So if your person starts off at, say, 40 and expected life expectancy is 65, you'll be capturing, that 25-year social return on investment, which is our program will provide this return on investment for 25 years. And this is what this will look like if we are able to move someone from not having a job to having a job, or having from a low skill job to a high skill job. And this is what we mean by social return on investment. From a philanthropic standpoint, it's important to know that this is benefiting society. And this is something that as you're putting this into your application, and you can quantify the investment, because this is not, this is about a investment decision from a funder, which is what's going to be return of this, whether it's socially or economically, what's going to be returned to your program, which is, it's nice that we see a lot of good programs. But as we talk about scaling and building capacity for managing larger grants, it's important for you to have this understanding of what is it that I want to be able to quantify about my programs down the year. So if we did a program, and it's from an evaluation, we did a program 5 years ago, and all the folks, say 75% of the people that we did the program with are now full-time employed, and they've, are at a certain salary range. We can help to quantify the contributions to society, which is essentially, the investment, the taxes plus consumption minus the actual investment. And that's the social return on investment, which is important for folks to understand that you're thinking about not just your program, but society as a whole. Does anyone have any questions about what we mean by social return on investment, or need some more illustrations? Okay. So I think that was our last slide around questions. We're going to open up for some questions, because I think as we are going into, or you may be going into your grant cycle, or begin to writing for grants, we actually have two budget templates for you all to really think about and consider. One is, for us, and also for other different funders, to begin to think about these templates as examples for developing your program, or aligning your program to your budget. So I'm going to pause there and stop screen share. Oh, not sure if I was being on screen the entire time. Okay.
Yeah, Tarek, I definitely want to see those templates, because I think that just I think that ties it all into if you can't quantify it, people can't see, how does it really benefit anybody? you know, if you say, hey, we're giving you, or your organization is asked for X amount of dollars, and we're providing that, but what are you going to do with it, and what is going to be the greatest return on it, and how does it impact that individual, the community? Because again, for many of us, you know, well, for me specifically, we're in the LMI communities, right?
Mhm.
So you're dealing with not just the community itself, but how does it also extend beyond the community, such as school, you know, involvement in other activities outside of school.
Mhm.
So I would have never even really tied that in to bringing that into the budget, that the social return on investment, that really is a critical piece, very critical. Yeah.
Terry, you look like you have a question.
Yeah, hi. So I'm thinking about the social return on investment, and it's a little bit clearer when you're talking about education and then getting a job or job training where you're moving up the career ladder. But in the health realm, like if you're doing, say, addressing food insecurity, could you talk a little bit about what type of ROI you would expect to see from that kind of a program?
So one of them could look like you're reducing, so social determinants of health is pretty elusive. When you think about health, you know, increasing the average life expectancy.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're targeting a community where the average life expectancy is 30% lower and you want to move it up a needle, you know, the question is, what's the needle?
Yeah.
And that comes down to if your food insecurity is what's the real issue here, right? So food insecurity is people may not have access to food, which means there's tertiary issues, which means is your program looking to provide more money in the pocket of people, or is it looking to bring food insecurity to that? So the supply chain is one way of quantifying that, which is we can either create new jobs, we can increase the life expectancy, we can move the needle on you know, new tax revenue, or increase the spending if they're you know, our produce. So I'm curious, Terry, what could you share a bit more about that? Your food, like, is the program focused on food security, or is it something else?
Yeah, no, actually, we focus on 3 different areas: job training, which I have that clear in my head how we could show ROI, education, so scholarships for at-risk youth to go to CPCC, and then also that's measurable. But the whole food insecurity health area, that's so, you know, those measurements are so far out in terms of life expectancy or reducing disease or, you know, things like that, that in order to put something in a grant that you could measure, that's a little bit.
Let me try to answer, Tariq. I have been working with Village Heartbeat, and I don't know with that program, but they weigh people, check their BMI, identify whatever habits they have, like smoking or drinking early on, and they weigh them, and they weigh in ever so often to see if those numbers have changed. And for the most part, you can see a drop in their BMI. You can see smoking cessation. You can see where people have lost a lot of weight, or where they have stopped drinking, or where they have started exercising or eating more healthful foods, you know. So there is a way to measure that, and they do that on a regular basis, which is why the program has been deemed to be so successful, because they have the BMIs, the blood pressure, the evidence of smoking cessation, the exercising on kettlebell, groups around the track. So those are the types of things you can use to show that it has made a difference, as opposed to somebody who may only walk a mile a week and somebody who walks a mile 5 times a week, or somebody who smokes and not smoke, and the weight loss. Those are the things that determine their success.
Okay, so yeah, what I'm hearing then is it's okay to measure health indicators like blood pressure, blood glucose, and then maybe attach that to research that says if you reduce blood pressure, then your life expectancy will increase by whatever percent. Is that the connection?
Yes.
Right.
And that shows the thoughtfulness. I think if you can get some literature review and say this is some of the costs associated to these issues from societal costs. And I'll share, I'm going to put this in the chat. There was a study done several years ago by economist Henry Levin, and I'm putting this in the chat. And it just really, like, for instance, talks about the quantification of the economic value. In the chat right now. But I think there's ways in which there are studies out there that may not be localized to the costs associated with it. But if you're, food insecurity is focused on, increasing, reducing heart disease or reducing some kind of, as Dr. Turner mentioned, health indicators. Those health indicators can create a return to society if someone lives longer than their expected life, than what they would if they were not. So that will be the gap between normally where their current behavior is, what their life expectancy is, to the average life expectancy. That gap of additional revenue or social return can be quantified.
Okay. And so I suppose then you could also say, if kids are fed and they're eating healthy foods, they're going to perform better in school. And that's going to lead to jobs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really, it's really from, as Dr. Turner profiled, we, not just from AACF perspective, but like we work on and been reviewers for grants and other, foundations and nonprofits. And it's really important to see that someone is thinking through these dynamics, right? These important questions, which is what's the value that you're looking to contribute by this investment.
Great, thank you for that.
So if everyone can look at you can get the economic value of Opportunity Youth for any of your programs and look at the cost, associated to situations, or look at the cost associated to that. And of course, I always say it's increased it by inflation. You don't, that's just something that as you are improving your programming and building that capacity over time, you should be also improving your knowledge of the field as it relates to research and publications. That's something that someone like Dr. Turner, who does this with the Department of Education and other federal agencies, they want to see that you're aware of interventions or later some studies, literature that support the justification of the program and its cost.
Tariq, did you put something in the chat? Because I don't see anything.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I put in the chat and I put it only for Kiana.
Thank you.
Yes, it's in the chat. And I probably will send this out for those who attend, for you all to look at this. It's I use this a lot in a lot of my grants that I did years ago. It's a very good way to understand, what we call opportunity cost, from economic value, from economic term to opportunity youth, versus, there's an opportunity here to invest, and the return to society is, we may not have to look at recidivism. We may not have to worry about, the increases of the needs for increased tax dollars to support different interventions, or maybe the reallocation of tax dollars to support important interventions. So there's ways for us to begin to say, planning your budget, but also planning with the investment will have a return to society in some way, shape, or form, socially and also economically.
Can you address, I've spoken with Kiana a little bit about this. An agency that applies for funds that is a smaller agency versus a larger agency, and obviously your capacity to do is reduced when you're a small agency, more of a startup kind of thing. What recommendations do you have for those smaller nonprofits in terms of being competitive in your grant cycle?
Well, our grant cycle is really focused on innovative, new, or existing organizations. And I think it's more about being innovative, I think, which is, we like as Dr. Turner, we want to see innovative. It's not about how big you are. It's about what's the innovation that you're looking to, spark, or something that's on the tipping point, or trying to get to the tipping point.
Okay.
So for smaller, we actually prefer those nimble organizations because they tend to be more innovative. We've seen a lot of our previous grantees that went off to do marvelous things in the community. So I think it's nice to know that, I'm an innovator by heart. So we want to see organizations that are being creative. And I think, Dr. Turner, please feel free to jump in and add more to that.
Yes, that's very true. So we look at the quality of the program as well. And a lot of times people have pie in the sky kind of ideas and whatnot. And we're like, this is not going to work. How can this work? I don't understand how this is working. So make sure that it's clear how the program will work and achieve the goals that you have listed in there, and also that you have enough money to do it. It's been my experience, as I have been reviewing grants as well for the Department of Ed, is that people put a lot of things in there, but we know it's not possible for them to do it. So automatically that lowers the score. So again, be innovative, but also be realistic about your goals and objectives and the
Sure.
clients that you're going to serve. So if you have a great program, but no one comes to it, what's the point? So how are you going to get people there? How would people benefit from your program? So think about things like that too. And I say that because sometimes I see programs set down in certain neighborhoods and they don't have the skills to communicate with the community, or they don't know how to communicate with the community. That creates a problem as well. And they don't have anything in the grant that says how they're going to manage this. How are you going to get people to participate or come out or do X, Y, Z?
Right.
So
Yeah,
that makes a difference too.
yeah. And add on to that, what Dr. Turner mentioned, which is there's always a need for partnerships, right? And I think that's critical as you're writing your proposal and you say, well, we're going to be doing this with a partner, and not just saying they're a partner, but describe what that partner will be doing in detail to support the innovation. Because sometimes, like, we know, organizations need to partner to share resources, or to share expertise, or to share networks. It's good to show that you can collaborate and also be competitive. So it's not about standing out by yourself, but showing that you have the capacity to garner partnerships, whether it's having a data sharing agreement with CMS, which we've seen with some of our partners, or we've seen some with working with the churches and having them writing letters of support and saying how they will do X, Y, and Z as a part of the partnership. That lets us know, and it lets any funder know, that there's people in here who believe that your idea is not just pie in the sky, as Dr. Turner mentioned, but it's something that's realistic, that's supported, and also there's some on the ground footwork that's already been accomplished, or the capacity to execute, the speed to execute. I think that's what we're also, which is, can this be executed in a timely fashion? And I'm sure Dr. Turner knows this, which is, if you're not able to execute the project and start executing the project at full scale within 90 days, that's a problem. So within 90 days, you should be at full scale execution, not planning. And that's what is within 90 days. What do you hope to be able to accomplish that you can demonstrate that you're on track to meet the milestones? And that's what we kind of covered in the logic model session. But that's important to know, that you're spending money efficiently and also effectively.
How long is your grant term? Is it a 1-year grant?
It is 1 year.
1 year. Okay.
But you didn't ask if you could reapply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this would be our first application.
Yeah, and also as and Kiana also knows this, which is the grant world is very connected, and I think that's something which is,
Sure is.
you know, there's a lot of connections and funders who may want to see, hey, you know, what organizations are doing XYZ that are new, innovative, or tackling systemic issues in a community, grassroots wise. And there's a lot that which is we're kind of planting the seeds or investing in the seeds of change. But with any other questions, thoughts?
No, I love it. I just think tying it all together is critical. The alignment part that you spoke of, I think I don't think it's what you say, it's how you say it, the quality of the response, matching the quantity of the response, matching the investment part, the social investment, who actually benefits from it, the critical nature of your data, critical nature of those collaborative partners. Now I see why. Now I see it, I feel it. You know what I mean? So, and obviously be innovative space that you're.
Is this for you all? You know, have you all? And I'm just curious. Is this maybe your first time writing grants, or is this something which is we've done this before, or just like what's our grant making strategy and what's our grant funding strategy and what we're looking for? Because I mean, I got a sense that some of you have done this before.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I'll tell you this. Right? You know, even for us who've been out here doing the boots on the ground actual work, you know, there's for many of us, you're operating in the dark because you're starting with, like most 501c3s, you're starting with purpose, right? But it's like show business. You're great at doing that, but do you know how to actually take care of the business side of doing? And that's where most of us, we're not educated on that. We don't have the access to information, or someone saying, hey, like just the things you were saying, that how are you doing to sustain issues, and where does that, when you said, hey, if this is in 90 days, most people are going to say that won't work. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? So we're tying, you know, like I said, I think most of us are great at pitching what we do, but the actual business side of it, we can't put that together on paper and design, like for instance, like you guys said earlier, the pitch is one. How do you set that and align that in your budget to where it matches up? That's critical for me. But I know we're doing work, and I know we've done that, making the right relationships. But how does that come across on paper? You know, and that's the key to me. The whole purpose of coming to, you know, speaking with you guys and Tiana is the things that we're still saying, which you don't know will hurt you. That's what I'm so humble. Don't know everything, and so to gain and things change. You know, people pivot. I've seen people never thought about, you know, these black issues that pivoted to, you know, you go to their websites and everything's Black Lives Matter now, whereas a year and a half ago, they weren't thinking about Black Lives Matter, but are chasing the dollars. And so for me, hey, at the end of the day, the purpose is what you should be chasing, and the resources will follow you, but you got to be able to communicate that to the funding side. Because to me, I've seen where I've had people say, no one will fund what you're doing, right? Whether it was bad timing or whether it's their personal belief or whatever it may be. But now it's this organization's doing the work, it's benefiting a lot of people. And like you said, where's your uniqueness? What's your innovation? That's what's intriguing to me.
Well, I'm just going to respond briefly. First of all, there's nothing wrong with having to pivot. If it's not working, don't be afraid to do something different or to try something different. The other thing, and this is old school, which I am, that I recommend is that you have a strategic plan with short range and long range goals. And so, there's some things you can do in 90 days. That's to me, that's easy fruit. But then the other things may be a little bit harder. They may be further out on the calendar, but you already have the foundation that you have created in the 90 days so you can do the other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I believe in long range and short term goals, and also give yourself a timetable for meeting those expectations. And if something's not working, don't wait till the end of it to say it's not working. You need to monitor and evaluate ongoing. That's an ongoing process in case you need to change gears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. That's what I would do.
When you were saying it, I was hearing priority timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Priority timeline. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but definitely. If there's any other questions, we'll be sending out the the presentation slides, and I think also some of the files, which is, helping you think through your budget planning process. And also, since some of you, maybe even a case study for you to think through, like, here's some case studies to look at that might talk to your food insecurity issue, that might talk to programs, or say, how do I have that knowledge base to understand or to reconfigure my programs to support these initiatives, and using someone else's case study as a way to think through that. And we'll also, as we mentioned, to some of the previous organizations on our grant writing series, which is, we'll be having some office hours for folks who want to sign up for office hours, to really do like a quick thought partner one-on-one session with one of the board members to help think through, some areas that might be of important or significant for your grant, or you're working on your grant that you look to submit down the road. So we're opening that up and want to make sure that you all informed and also engaged.
When does your grant cycle open?
It will open in August 2021.
And do you automatically get sent a link for that, or do you have to be looking for it?
For those who are participating, they'll automatically get a link, but also it'll be on FFTC's website. Kiana is working with the marketing and communications team. It will be known, shared and publicized very broad, the different networks.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that concludes our discussion and presentation. Thank you all for your questions and your thoughts. And if there's anything, please feel free to reach out to Kiana, Dr. Turner, or myself, and see how we can help and support.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
And good luck in the process.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
indeed.
Thank
Thank you so
Very
much.
much.